But in those 5.5 years, remarkable changes have occurred. There was no Facebook. There was no MySpace. There was no YouTube. There was no Twitter. There was no Club Penguin. There were none of the social networking sites which have come to dominate our kids' lives today and where they spend so much of their time. Looking at a group of young people like you, I didn't think in those days that you might have a cell phone that you would spend more time on than you would spend talking with your parents. But that, in fact, is the reality for literally millions of American children every day. And we ignore it at our peril, because we live in a 24/7 media world that affects every aspect of our children's lives, and I would argue begins to affect all aspects of our own lives. And let's take a look at it for a little while. And what I'd like to do is, in a very short way with the audience, ask you some questions and see if any of you can give a sense of the media landscape today. So I have a few questions I want to throw out at you. Just raise your hand and give me an answer. We'll do it very quickly. The first one is on average, how many hours per day does the average young person who's 8 and older in the United States spend consuming media? How many hours per day of media does the average kid consume? Anybody have an answer? Anybody think they know? Mark, what do you think the answer is? 10 to 12. Okay, maybe that's what Mark lets his own children do, but in truth, the answer to that is almost 7 hours per day on average, about 45 hours per week that young people spend consuming media. That's far more than they spend in school and almost 3 times as much time as they spend with their parents on average. How about TV sets in a bedroom? What percentage of kids 8 and older do you think have a TV set of their own in their own bedroom? What percent of kids do you think have one in their own bedroom? 45%. Correct answer. 2 out of 3. 65% of kids today have a TV set of their own in their own bedroom. And when you ask that question, by the way, to large groups of youngsters, like a few of them are here today, they usually go, do you mean with cable access or non-cable access? Another question for you. How many commercials? I'm concerned about commercialism in media and sort of the constant barrage of commercial messages that young people and adults receive, particularly young people. How many commercials on TV alone do you think the average youngster sees in a year? How many commercials on TV alone do you think they see? 1 million. Anybody else guess? The correct answer? 40,000 commercials a year on TV alone. And as all of us know, and we're going to talk about today, kids are migrating from television and traditional media over to the web and to cell phones, where there are thousands and thousands of more commercial messages that they're seeing. All right, let's try this one. What's the #1 website for kids ages 2 to 11 in the United States today? The #1 visited website for children ages 2 to 11. What do you think? Disney. Nick, what do you think, young man? Google. Good guess. It's actually owned by Google. It's YouTube. YouTube is the #1 website visited by children ages 2 to 11 in the United States today. Think about that. The founders of YouTube are in their late 20s. Do you think they created YouTube for the 2 to 11 demographic? I don't think so, but it shows you how quickly the world is changing. And of course, that's all user-generated content. That is all made, it's including the content we have here today at the City Club is on YouTube. But YouTube is all user-generated content. Okay, how many members of Facebook do you think there are today? Correct. An audience member got it correct. There was an article about it this week. 200 million members of Facebook today in early April 2009. And you know what? That number doubled in the last 8 months. That number doubled in the last 8 months. So this is a new digital age that has gone far from the world of TV and movies and music that we were growing up with. Now, what percentage of kids 8 to 12 have a cell phone today? What do you think? 5, 10%? 83% said a young man in that demographic. Actually, the number is 46, 47%. So, yeah, but almost 1 out of 2 kids ages 8 to 12 today have a cell phone. And for those of us who know media and technology, they know that a cell phone is essentially a mini computer today. So it's not just for cell phone purposes, It's for video and music and everything. It's really the computer of the future, both here in the U.S. and around. And a last question to see how politically knowledgeable you are about this. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, is the body nationally that oversees all media, telephony, and telecom in the United States. Who can name the incoming chair of the FCC under the Obama administration? And I'll give you a hint, he's Barack Obama's one of his best friends from Harvard Law School, and he co-managed the Harvard Law Review with him. That's a big hint. I would assume everyone in the audience would be able to get the answer based on that. The answer is, and it's an important name for you to know if you care about the future of media and technology in the United States, is Julius Genachowski. And he and his fellow commissioners will be charged, quite frankly, on our behalf as citizens of this country at looking out over that media landscape and trying to bring some order and regulation to it and trying to make sure that we use it to our best advantage. So media has been transformed in so many different ways in the past 5 years, in the past 25 years, in ways that have shaped all of our lives, but most of all will set the tone for our children's lives, their education, and their future. And that's true both here in the United States and globally, because of the media revolution, we live in an interconnected world where a video posted here in Cleveland on YouTube can be seen instantaneously in New Delhi or Guatemala or in Kinshasa, Zaire. So wherever you are today, you can connect through media. And that is transforming global politics, global communication, and all of our lives and futures. Now, those are challenges and opportunities that we associate with both of that. There are pluses and minuses. And let's talk about it for a second, but let me frame for just a minute, and Ralph mentioned this a little in his introduction. But the minuses I would frame in a context of public health. Because media consumption today for young people implicates various elements of public health. For example, obesity. The number one issue of childhood disease in the United States today is obesity and type 2 diabetes associated with that. 1 out of 3 children in the state of California, where I live, the most outdoor-oriented state there is, are seriously overweight or obese. A key factor in that, media and consumption of television and other, not just sedentary behavior, but the advertising messages. If you want to look at other public health issues that the health community faces in the United States, violence, dramatically impacted by media. Sexual behavior in various different ways, affected by media. Girls' and boys' body image. Drugs, alcohol, tobacco consumption. The 50% of kids who start smoking in high school do so because they watch it on television or in the movies. The impact of media on all sorts of public health issues, Ralph mentioned ADHD and early brain development, is well documented by the public health scientists of the United States. And so it's an issue that as parents, as educators, and as societal leaders we need to be concerned about. But it's not the only way we need to think about media, because media also opens up extraordinary avenues of education and other opportunity that were not even available 5 years ago. The young gentleman here in the audience mentioned Google as a popular website for 2 to 11-year-olds. Google has now changed the way that young people do their homework. The media environment and the technology that have been developed just in the last few years can transform the way that we teach history and music and math and science all across this country if we put it to good use. So I think it's an error to just look at the downsides and the dangers that this world of 24/7 media present. You have to look at it in a balanced perspective. But let me just give you a few of the other examples of how I think it affects us and the implications of this extraordinary transformation that we're living through. It affects the way that we communicate, interact, and connect. Young people today communicate by texting their friends, Facebooking their friends. That is a verb, for those of you who don't know it, to Facebook. Google is now a verb, as we all know.